Good morning. Good morning, Dreamforce. My name is Matt Berenberg. I'm Director of Identity Product Management here at Salesforce, in charge of all of the identity products and identity platform services. Today, I'm going to show you how you can make your employees more productive and secure using Salesforce Identity. All right. So before we get started, this is day 4 of Dreamforce. I'm sure you've seen this before. I may make mention of products that aren't currently available, so please make your purchasing decisions based on what's available for use today. So, how many of you have ever tried to access an application and not actually been able to access that application? Right? How many of you have put in an IT request that seems like it's taken forever to get fulfilled? And how many of you have to remember multiple passwords for the systems that you use at work? Right? It's frustrating, right? There has to be a better way. And there is. Salesforce Identity for employees. With Salesforce Identity, you can ensure that you have the right access to the right people at the right place at the right time. And we do so through the following solutions: directory integration, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and user provisioning. Breaking this down, we'll start with directory integration. How many here use Active Directory at work? Most of us, right? And I bet we have great processes in place for managing the users and access that you have in Active Directory. So why not extend those processes for managing your users and users' access in Salesforce? With directory integration, you can configure it such that whenever you create a user in Active Directory, disable them in Active Directory, or assign them to group memberships, it can cause a corresponding change within Salesforce, creating your users, adding them to a profile or a permission set or a role or a public group. It also provides single sign-on so that users can log into Salesforce using their AD credentials. We also provide multi-factor authentication. So everybody here has data in Salesforce or access in Salesforce that they want to protect. We provide a solution that gives you the right balance of security and usability. When you go to log into Salesforce, we send a push notification to a device that nearly everybody carries with them every day, your phone. Or we even can push it to a wearable device like an Apple Watch if you have one of those. Simply approve the request and you're in. We can also use contextual information to automatically approve that request on your behalf. So if you're accessing the same application from the same browser, the same device, in the same location using geotagging on your phone, you can tell Salesforce Authenticator to approve that request automatically. So if you're logging in at your office every morning, that's a common occurrence. You could just approve it automatically. We also, if you forget your phone, we provide temporary one-time passwords that your help desk can assign for users for the day. We also provide one-time passwords, so if you're on a plane, the application will show you the password that you could use to log in. So if you don't have push notifications, you can use that. And in Winter 17, we provide support for a U2F standard, so you could use hardware tokens like your YubiKey. Now, once you're in Salesforce, you have the App Launcher. The App Launcher is a central portal that you can use to access all of your applications. And it's customized for each user, so they only see the applications that they need access to in the order that they set. So if you commonly use Gmail, first thing when you log in, you can put Gmail to the top of the list, and you have it readily available every morning. It also provides single sign-on, so if you need to access those applications, you can do so without having to enter a username and password to each application. And if you don't see an app that you need, you can simply request it. The platform will obtain approval for the app if needed and automatically create an account for you on those external applications. So you can use each one of these individually or you can bring them together to provide a more holistic identity solution. And actually, the ones on the right-hand side are included in most platform licenses and freely available to you with those licenses. So let's see how this works. We'll start by going to my org. So I like coffee, obviously. So my org is custom labeled fixcoffee.my.salesforce.com. When I go there, I'm automatically redirected to our directory integration tool called Identity Connect. From here, I can enter my username and my password from AD, and I'm logged in. Now, for this, we're using multi-factor authentication to protect my org. And on my phone, I've received a push notification saying that this user is trying to log in. And it has my location here in Moscone. It has the browser that I'm using. I'm trying to access a Salesforce service with this particular username. So now, if I approve that request, I'm given my app launcher. So this is, again, the portal that I can use to access all of my applications. So if I need to go to Concur, simply select Concur, and I'm automatically logged in. You can also customize the order. Okay. And this is a simple Lightning app. As you see here across the top, I have multiple tabs. So if you want to create an intranet for your users, you can include additional features like the help desk or a link to the help desk. You can include your org chart, corporate news, whatever you need to provide to your users and make them more effective as they use this tool. Now, I need Box.com for a special project, and I don't have Box access. So let me go and request that. I go to the Store tab, and I see all of the available apps that I can request, and I need Box. So I'll request access. And that starts the approval. Now, my manager is here at Dreamforce and is not sitting in front of her computer to be able to approve this, but fortunately, she's using Salesforce 1. And she just received a push notification that I've requested access to this app. So even through Salesforce 1, she can go and approve the access. And she's having a great time at Dreamforce. So she's going to jump out to Workday and request Monday off so that she can recover. The single sign-on capabilities extend beyond the browser and are also included in the phone as well. Going back, behind the scenes here, Salesforce is going out to Box and creating an account for me. Once it's completed, I can go to my app launcher, and I see that I have Box access now. If I select Box, see my new account's created and ready for use. All right. So this is a dev session, so I'm going to go into some more details here on how this works. We'll start with the architecture. So we have Active Directory and we have Salesforce, and we want to pull these two things together. We do that through a product called Salesforce Identity Connect. It's an on-premise product that's deployed in your DMZ, and that brokers the relationship between Salesforce and Active Directory. The first thing that we need to do here is we need to open a connection between Identity Connect and AD. And it connects using a standard protocol, LDAP or LDAP-S. So now Identity Connect can see the users that exist in your directory as well as their group memberships, and can also log users in based on the users that you have in the directory. So once Identity Connect knows what users you have, it needs to write that information to Salesforce. And we do that through standard HTTPS, calling our REST APIs. So from a firewall perspective, you only need to open up outbound connections to HTTPS, and Identity Connect can now push the user and group information and log your users in. Once you're in Salesforce, you also, sometimes we have more than one Active Directory environment, right? We have acquisitions, we have a very large organization. If you want to integrate with more than one directory environment, you have two options. You can set up Identity Connect to link to your global catalog, or you can deploy separate environments. Both environments can connect to Salesforce and manage the different sets of users for you. Additionally, if you have multiple orgs, you can set up Identity Connect, a single instance of Identity Connect to manage multiple Salesforce orgs. Now, once you're in Salesforce, you want to access the third-party applications. And we do that through single sign-on using SAML or OpenID Connect protocols, which are open standards that most third-party vendors are now adopting. I think thousands of vendors: Concur, Box, Office 365, Google, and many, many more. And you can also provision accounts in those systems using standard REST and SOAP APIs. Now let's look at Identity Connect a little closer. So as I mentioned before, Identity Connect is the application that bridges Active Directory and Salesforce. Within the application, you're given a list of all the attributes in Salesforce. This includes standard attributes and custom attributes. And then you can map those attributes to the list of attributes that you have in Active Directory. You can also define transformation scripts using simple JSON. So if you want to create, in this example, a substring, or more advanced transformations like taking your SAM account name and appending @salesforce.com to it, or doing additional lookups to find your user or your manager, for example, with an AD, it's a pretty powerful method that you can use to transform that data. You also have the ability to map AD groups to profiles, permission sets, roles, and groups. So by assigning a user to your sales AD group, for example, that can configure them in Salesforce, create the account, and assign them to all the profiles and access that they need within Salesforce. We also automatically set up single sign-on for your users. So when you go to the single sign-on tab, you click a single button, and we will push the configurations out to Salesforce because we have a connection over our APIs. And if your users don't like using a username and password, we can automatically log them in using Kerberos, or Integrated Windows Authentication. Once in the platform, we use a technology called connected apps. And connected apps do a lot of things. There are many types of connected apps. The first type are bookmark and web-based connected apps. And this is what I showed you on the app launcher. So this includes the name of the app, the description of the app, and the URL, or the icon for the app. It also contains links out to an external system. So you can create a bookmark app, which is exactly as it sounds. It's just a link to an external URL. So if you're using an application that doesn't require a login, you can still add that to your portal. Or you can extend that to use single sign-on and be able to automatically log your users in. We also have API and mobile connected apps. So the API connected apps are used to integrate your other third parties over a standard protocol called OAuth. When you're logging into Salesforce One, this is using an API connected app. When you're logging in through Data Loader, same API connected app. And there are many other external web applications that use this as well. We also have a new pilot for asset tokens, which is essentially a signed piece of JSON, or signed piece of JSON that you can add to your smart devices and use that to communicate to backend IoT applications within the context of your registered user. So you can actually log into Salesforce, register a device, get this token, assign it to your smart device, and then that token could then connect to other systems on your behalf. and also have context, so if those systems need to communicate back to Salesforce, they know exactly who to connect as. We can also send push notifications to your mobile devices. So in the example I showed earlier, when my manager received a notification for approval, that's all done through mobile and API connected applications. We also have Canvas. So you can develop applications off of Salesforce using any standard web-based language and then access those applications within Salesforce. You can actually create an iframe in Salesforce. So for example, using Service or Service Cloud, a lot of times you have other web-based applications throughout your environment, and your service professional is going to each of those applications to get different pieces of information. Using this, you can actually merge everything into a single application. They select the tab, they get an iframe of the application, and using our identity services, they can interact with that application using the context that's established when they log into Salesforce. So you can ensure that they have the right level of rights and access within that app. Connected apps also allow you to manage policies. So who should actually have access to this app? How long should a user be able to connect to the app? When you're thinking about web-based policies, typically you log your users out after a few hours of inactivity. But if they had to log in every time they access your mobile device, that would be very cumbersome and it would drive adoption down. So you can set up a separate session policy for Salesforce One and any other external web application or custom mobile app such that you can control that behavior. You can also add security policies as well. So you want PIN protection, or you want them to get prompted for multi-factor authentication when they access this particular application. You can also customize the behavior. So we have a new feature called Connected App Plugins that you can customize the authorization to your apps. So for example, if I'm integrating with maybe any perk, and you only want users to be able to access any perk when they meet their quota, you can set up custom authorization within Salesforce to block access until that quota is met. You can also completely customize the attributes that are sent using SAML or OAuth. So if you have a backend system that needs additional attributes or additional data, the most common use case we see here is you want to send a list of permission sets that you have in Salesforce to external systems, and then you have a map there that can then authorize you to that system. You can do so through this customization. Or you can even completely overwrite or modify SAML assertions through this flow. It's also the hook into user provisioning. So as I showed earlier, when you're authorized or you get access to a connected app, you may also want to tie that to provisioning so that not only can you do single sign-on to that app, you can get an account created for you. Or if you're deauthorized or removed access, you want to remove access to that application immediately, and this is a tie-in through provisioning. Taking a closer look at how provisioning works, it's event-driven. So as you create users within Salesforce, as you assign them profiles or permission sets that authorize them to specific applications, or as you invoke provisioning using code over the APIs, that will create an event to be processed. The event is stored in an object, a standard object called user provisioning request, which is essentially the orchestration for provisioning. We have a batch process that checks the events, and for each event calls a connector. The connector is a custom piece of Apex and Visual Flow that describes how that event should be processed against each target. Right? If you're creating an account on Box.com and on Google, that might require different operations. You might also have a different business process for creating those accounts. So you can create custom connectors to meet whatever business needs you have. The connector goes out to the third party, creates the account or updates the account, and then we store the result within Salesforce. So there's a separate objects called user provisioning account and user provisioning log. That stores all of the information of you have an account in this third party, as well as the state of that account. Is it enabled? Is it disabled? As well as the logging information around that activity. So if there was an error, you could then go in and troubleshoot exactly what went wrong. Taking a closer look at the provisioning flow, so this is an actual connector that we have today. We have the operation. So as messages are created in the queue, they could be a collect message, which is essentially go out to this third party, tell me what accounts already exist there, and link them back to existing Salesforce users. Could also create, update, enable, disable, and delete those. Each one will have different code associated with it, right? Collecting accounts may be different than creating accounts. So we have these plugins that are used to do that. You also notice here that we have chaining, so you can chain your plugins together. A good example of this is a gentleman came up to me earlier in the conference and said, we have this interesting scenario where we need to create Gmail accounts through Salesforce, but you're required to have an email account before you can actually create an account in Salesforce, right? So for that, what you could actually do is create a user with just a base email like example@salesforce.com. They're created, they're immediately authorized to Salesforce. You go out, you create the account, and then you have another process in your flow to then write that email address back to Salesforce. So now the user record is updated with the correct email address. You can also do additional things here like assign additional access or write to another external system. So if you're interested in this, this is actually something that we provide freely available. We have all of the source code and we have the flow. Please see me after the talk and I can get you access to it. Also, we have great reporting for our identity features. So if you need to see who has access to what, who approved access to what, how your 2FA rollout is going, right? How many users have actually adopted 2FA. And also it's important to note, 2FA is the #1 thing that you can do to protect your users and protect your data in Salesforce. Attackers are not coming after our data centers, they're coming after your users. Or more likely to come after your users, because that's the weakest link in the chain. So if you take one thing away from this presentation, deploy two-factor authentication. We have a lot of resources available. So you can try this free of charge. You can go out and get a DE org, and it has identity services built in. We have several trailheads available that step you through setting up single sign-on and setting up all of the other identity features I mentioned here today. We also have a lot of YouTube videos. We have free code available up on GitHub. And we also have a success community where if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So with that, I want to thank you for coming. We have 6 minutes for questions. So, yes.
Hello.
Hello.
So we have our work, we have our internal users, and we have our partners.
Sorry?
So can you not hear me?
Yeah.
Bit of a sore throat.
No
we
worries.
have internal users in our org, and we have external partners as well. If we want to do single sign-on into our company's LDAP, is there any possibility to have half of the user base on single sign-on and certain groups based on maybe users or profiles not using single sign-on? Or
Yes.
is it all or nothing?
You can. No, you can. So there are several parts to that question. So for your employees, you can force them to use single sign-on, or you can set it up such that only a subset of users need to use single sign-on. Also, if you're using partners and employees, or you have partners and partners and customers accessing your org, there's a separate solution for that, Salesforce Identity for Customers, which leverages the community cloud or the community technology. And for those users, you can set up single sign-on, you can set up social sign-on, and you can set up a fully branded experience as well. Also, your employees now in summer 16 can log into the communities using their internal credentials. So they no longer have to go to the org and then switch over or click the login as an employee link. Did I answer your question, or did
Kind of.
Kind of?
It
Okay.
wasn't purely communities, it was purely admin people, like managing cases at the bank. And these are...
Sorry, can you turn up his mic, please?
Better?
Better, yes.
Right, okay. So it was like agents or advisors who are handling calls.
Okay.
And they are using case creation and stuff like that at the back end of the system. Plus developers, etc., that I've got in a house that are, let's say, my company employees.
Yes.
So the others are not. A group of people have got access to single sign-on within the company, and 100 people, whatever it is, they don't.
Yep.
So I want to separate this. Nothing to do with communities, purely back-end access.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, you can do that.
Good.
So based on your profile, based on your setup, you can support multiple IDPs as well. So if you have another partner that needs to log in and they have their own identity provider, then you can configure it so that both will work, or as many as you need. We have some companies using 1,000 different identity providers. We also support delegated administration. So if you want to delegate control of those accounts to a third party, you can do that as well within the context of the access that you actually provide them.
Excellent. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of Dreamforce.